and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the inner planes, where each week we take a look at a different plane of existence as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. That was my Dungeons.
Dragons.
Yeah. This week, we're going to be investigating further into the quasi-elemental planes.
Yeah, so we're jumping. Yeah, I'm excited. Well, last time we did, what was it? No, it's quasi. It's our first quasi.
This is our first quasi.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, we're going
right.
even more granular.
We've only been in the para-elemental planes, and now we're in the quasi-elemental planes.
Smaller and
smaller. Yes, that's right, because we were in smoke, and I can't remember what the other one was.
Smoke and ooze, our favourite.
Of course, ooze, the blobbly one.
Blobbly.
But like those, very similarly, they have interconnect with 6 different planes in their relationship, but unlike the para-elemental planes, where they're the ones that basically there are 4 of them that sit betwixt the 4 main elements, these are now the ones that they are the 8 that sit betwixt either a main plane of elemental energy and either the positive or negative energy planes.
Yes. It's wild to even think about. That's why I have to look at the maps every time we come to these ones. And so yes, we've got, like, for this one, the first one we're looking at, the quasi-elemental plane of lightning. It sits between air, and the top of the thing is positive energy, and then everything else is all the parallel elementals.
Exactly.
But I was like, and I know we said it before, it is like a sphere, it is like a ball, but I think I'm going to have to get like a tennis ball and like write things on, because I can't even imagine. I don't know, maybe my brain is not made for 3D imaging and stuff, but I highly recommend.
Get to the para quasi-elemental planes, which they haven't even done, where it's like the lightning meets, and it's the over. No, it's not worth it.
Just even smaller, granular, absolutely. But so now we're into the quasi-elemental planes, and there are 8 of these. So we're going to look at 2 today, and this is lightning. And then we're going to go on to mineral, the second part of this episode.
Yeah, because they actually have as much information in each of these quasi-elemental planes as they do in some of them, as they do in the para-elemental. Some are a little bit shorter, but some are actually similarly sized.
And this is a good question, because obviously we've been traveling around. We've been doing, a little bit of sightseeing. And it kind of feels like, for me, and I know we've got a couple of episodes coming up on these quasi-elemental planes. It's like, what's the point? Because I feel like some of these are definitely more like little regions of where, because we'll talk about like how the sort of the core lightning area interacts with other things, and we've talked about it before in the para elemental planes. They're like regions, and they talk about it. These feel even smaller, but they're also infinite, and then there's not much in them, and that's fine. But it's like, how long are you going to spend here? So I think, again, it's what for me, what it feels like is someone's gone, we need more stuff to fill out this book. Jot down 2 pages of ideas, expand on it a little bit, and then go for it. It just doesn't feel, to me, as fleshed out as it could be. But then at the same time, I don't know what else you could put in here.
Well, exactly. No, I know. But I feel you could fill them out as much as the other ones. Like when you take like lightning, I think when you talk of the ones, particularly the ones where they resonate with maybe a dragon, for example, like the lightning ones, then I feel like you could add more. Like they've got Eye of the Storm in this, and they talk about things like that, but you could do so much more about storms. Like they do a bit of storms in air, but it feels like they could have maybe planted a bit more of that into this one, and with air being a bit more about properties of air itself. Like, I don't know, they could have played with it, hot air and cold air. They could have played with air.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about like air currents per se or anything like that. They could have done
toxic, they could have talked more about its interactions with the other planes and talked about it doing more of those things. Like when you get to, instead of breaking these down, they did really go for the para-elemental planes, or just talked about the main planes, and added these para-quasi places on the map of each of those planes. Maybe would have been the better way of doing it. So when you're in air, one of the regions of air is also lightning, where it interacts with radiance. And and instead of having to break down like they have the plane in lightning, we talk about its relationship then lightning to radiance, steam, ice, air, and smoke. Well, steam and smoke, it's called both the dark lands, and it's very similar. One's a little bit warmer, one's a bit colder, but it's misty, and smoky. And then the positive energy one, you get the wall of energy, which is basically just the positive energy plane. So I
Yeah,
don't.
it just becomes a
Yeah,
wall and then has this random tower of storms sticking out of
yeah,
it, which then has two lines. Again, we'll go into the sites and stuff
yeah,
in the second later, but it's just like, and it goes, nobody knows what's in there, but people think there's something in there, and you're like, come on, give us
yeah.
something.
I'd rather just pack this all into air
Hmm.
and had air with steam and lightning and
Yeah.
radiance and all these things all packed into one of
Hmm.
air and really gone deep into like this is the whole of air in one go.
Yes,
That
I
would possibly be
agree.
better. And then took some of these, like have the glistening crystals, which is where
Yes.
lightning and ice interact, and have that
Mm.
as an element, an area on, just talk about regions and really map it out, like give us a map of a plane to exist
Mm.
in which has all these varied landscapes.
Hmm.
To me would be a more interesting book,
Yeah,
personally.
so I just feel like, yeah, like it would feel like, because then you have more reasons to explore the plane of air and then its variations, rather than like
Yeah,
how often are you going to end up at the glistening crystals, etc. Because like
yeah.
I just feel like to keep saying like, oh, how do we get there? And it's like it's very rare you'll be able to directly get here unless you go through
Mm,
via one of the other planes. So that's the thing I think of moving around. But I will say the glistening crystal area, like you said, it's that little border between the ice and the lightning
mm.
planes. I quite enjoyed that little bit about it because it talks about this, huge. Because basically, lightning, it is like the plane of air, except it's all storm clouds and lightning bolts of air. So it's very evocative. But then
Mm.
the glistening crystal bit, it's like there's still those storm clouds, but it's filled with these huge floating icebergs,
Yeah.
which glow with an unnerving electrical light throughout, and it's called bright ice, which can only be found in this area, and it has a tremendous magical shine until it melts. So again, it's another bit of a light source that we could use elsewhere if open flame isn't to your suiting. So I just thought, oh, I quite like. Again, I'm very keen on like magical, like weirdly magical light sources that don't necessarily. It's not flame. I don't know if anyone's watched recently Damsel on Netflix. It's a so-so film, but they have a really cool way of like showing light in that film and using
Oh
like
yeah.
magical creatures and magical like artifacts. I just thought it looked really cool. So I would recommend watching the film. I think it's an okay film anyway,
Yeah.
but the way it sort of indicates light and how to use like magical
I
creatures to
like that.
to like do light effects, I just thought, oh, that's really cool, really interesting.
That's really cool. And I think, and I agree. And that's why I brought it up as something like that. Keep, because it's so cool and it's really evocative. But the Steam Darklands, that's just like, oh, it's just thicker cloud with some lightning in it. And you're like,
Mm,
that's just the storm. And we've got the steamy bits. You can do the steamy, misty bits. That's great. Like
yeah.
I just can imagine in my mind, and like if I had the time, the inclination, and all the things that we all wish we had, to like rework do like a reworked planes of existence, and actually like what this is me going on Warhammer lore, but in the new Warhammer Fantasy, which is called
Mm,
Age of Sigmar, right?
mm.
And in that, what they and you've looked at Warhammer Fantasy
I
roleplay. You
have,
remember
yeah.
that in that they have the winds of magic. Do you
Hmm.
remember those?
Hmm.
And so like it was shadow, light, I can't remember the other ones off the top of my head now. Oh, they've all gone out of my head. Death and life and all those things.
Yeah.
But what they did is when the old world blew up and it turned to Age of Sigmar, they took all of those winds of magic and said
Hmm.
that what they did is they coalesced into realities of their own. And so
Mm.
so it's very Planescape Age of Sigmar because it's all set up like a series of planes based on each of the magical disciplines. So very much like what we've got here.
Hmm.
But in that, it has maps and regions within. So one of them is metal magic, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you have like the golden fields and the lead pits, and I mean, there's better names than that as well. But like different relationships with all the things what metal could be, from
Hmm.
melton to rock solid to gold to lead, and all these things,
Hmm.
and mountainscapes, and it's drawn this beautiful map with regions and inhabitants and
Mm.
settlements and places to inhabit and people that exist within this world,
Yeah.
humanoid and not, creatures of this realm that are particular, like they've got what I think the Turon has a famed, I mean, and when we think of dragons, the Warhammer dragons and this are like magically oversized beasts that
Mm.
are godlike beasts, and they've got one that lives in this molten pool of gold, that kind of thing. That's so much more evocative, and I feel like you
Yeah.
could take all of this stuff in these books and condense them down into these maps of regions that you could just inhabit and have a planescape adventure in, much like we had with the outer planes. That feels like, okay, the people of air, how do they exist? Well, they have this area of lightning, and there's the storm giants, and there's a storm giant castle, and here's a really cool map. But around the storm giant castle have existed a bunch of dwarves who are using the electrical energy to infuse their special weapons, and through that, they've got this whole infrastructure, and they build skyships and fly around the air, and who wants to go play that? You live in a realm of skyships, like I don't know. And that's kind of that's kind of where I think it could go.
Yeah, and just to leap off of that as well, I think one thing that obviously we found throughout this book, there's always been tables for like, strong currents, strong this, that, and the other. I do wish there was like, I don't know, what type of clouds or storm clouds there would be, like, and really work on like, how bad is the lightning storm and what kind of clouds, and then mashing those things together to create very unique weather patterns. Exactly. But you do have like the hurricane, tornado thing from before, and just so there's stuff like that. So I think it is sort of
airships?
there.
Like,
there's no airships,
or Spelljammer,
or even like again, what I'm thinking of, Stardust, the Neil Gaiman book. There's ships in the sky that collect lightning as a thing. That could be a thing in here as well. Anyway, but let's see what we've got anyway.
That was an aside.
We don't think very much of it. I think it's what we're gonna.
We've come to your into your hallway,
we knock on
gone.
the knock on the wall of energy is like completely bright, impenetrable barrier, and we go, not keen on this.
No.
But if anything, because it's very much, as you said, the plane of lightning is very much very similar to the plane of air. Again, you have to think where is down, and then that's how you move. But the difference really is the sheer display of raw energy, which again, it could be incredibly evocative. Getting here, as we sort of said, apparently, because there's something we haven't mentioned, is that the point of view of these two planes we're going to talk about today, they do come from actual people that have been, have written into the editor. And this one is very much matter-of-factly, I think, by this person, who is a governor scholar of planar mechanics, the Till-Adil, the never forgotten.
Hyphenate, apostrophed.
I know. I'm just like, but so obviously governor from one of the factions, and so they've written. So the Grand Archives of the Fraternity of Order list a total of 143 portals leading to this. Although surely many more exist. But again, it's that idea is like where you will find it. What do they exist? If you're going to get ones that because we talked about before, like ones that can exist sort of on the material plane, presumably there'll be one in every storm that holds sufficient power to do so, but to do so again, it is very rare, and probably you're just more unlucky if you get struck and then you get teleported to the plane of lightning. But also stuff like magical items and spells. The breath of the dragon we've talked about before. Don't do that. That sounds like one way to die. But it does talk about two in particular, which again, I like the fact in this particular account of it, they are numbered. So like portal number 22 lies on Arcadia, known as the Storm King's Gate. So this idea, again, we'll come into it, there's giants. There's certainly, I don't want to say elemental giants. Well, there are elemental giants, but the storm giants are one of the, I don't want to say the best. They're high on the order. I think they are at the top, aren't they? It's
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it's Storm and then Cloud. I think that's the way it goes. In my head.
Hill's the lowest. I remember that.
Yes, Hill is the lowest. So again, is that something that if it's called the Storm King's Gate, it is definitely going to be difficult to get through because there's going to be lots of servants who are probably going to squish you, right? Because they're pretty big and they've got lightning. And then you've got portal number 81 through to 85 lies on Mount Olympus, where at least 4 storm deities, claim rule over the two-way portals to lightning. And then it doesn't say anything else about them. I'd like to know their names. Why is there 4 of them? If you've got them listed, there must be like some political tensions going on there. And again, which leads on to the next fact. Again, jumping ahead a little bit, there's no major powers here. There's no major players or anything like that, because they're like,
There are
even though
none
there
in
must...
any of the quasi, I think, that I found so far.
there's some named things, but no
yeah.
necessarily deity like thing, which is totally fine.
Yeah, and there's
certainly...
no like arco elemental like we have in the other ones, like a elemental prince or princess or something.
Yeah, exactly. And again, doesn't matter too much, but it just feels a bit like, well, we've definitely got Stormking, so maybe there is someone who will lay claim to the realm, but not actually be in the realm, if you see what I mean.
Exactly.
But mostly because it talks about like the lifespan of several elemental creatures that are made out of lightning is being very short. But again, we'll come on to that when we actually get there. We're still on sort of the physical conditions there. But I just thought the ones that they named as actual portals, Arcadia and Mount Olympus, obviously good aligned outer planes as well, but also doesn't give you much information of how to get there. So I think, again, my way to get here, which would involve me getting to the plane of air and then walking, rather than, I don't know, getting struck by lightning. I think I'm going to take that former option rather than the latter option to get here.
Well, I think the other one, the dragon one is kind of a good way of like, okay, if you're in a battle and you want your campaign to go, but you realize your players are not going to win against this blue dragon, then why not just do that. It's their turn. They get their breath weapon. They attack all of you or 90% of you, and you end up in one of the planes of elemental planes. And then that's the next best bit of the campaign. Is you've got to then survive. That's the only other way to use it, I think. Really, is where I'd go to, because otherwise, you're right. There's not a lot of information here, and who's going to try to? I mean, why else do you want to go here? We'll get to that. I don't know.
Yes.
But why do you want to then to get to somewhere that not many people want to get to, unless you want to do the I am the one and only Highlander, get the electrical lightning on your sword to make it better? I don't know. Then why would you want to fight a bunch of Storm Kings to get through to it? Or Zeus, or something, or Thor, or whatever. So, Agree.
But the one thing again coming to hazards now is that it can be as safe as the plane of air, which has always been deemed as like, this is the safest place to be. So we can breathe here. If anything, the air here is crisp and pure. Just there's a little smell of ozone and almost like a metallic taste from the charge, which I quite like.
The tube. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Like,
or when you take your jumper off.
Yeah.
And the static, that smell of static.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good way. I would definitely describe that to the players if we got there. As long, but the problem is, at any point you could be struck by lightning. There's a 10% chance of a non-native being struck by a lightning bolt, but then anyone who's carrying more metal than a dagger automatically draws a bolt, which is terrifying. And it's each round as well. So you could be suddenly, you appear and, your paladin with the metals like, like flying through the sky is just going to get constantly hit by lightning bolts.
1d8 times 10 points of damage.
They're more powerful than...
for a lot.
It is pretty bad. Yeah, you don't want to go here when you're a low level for sure. But successful saving throw versus rod. I'm not entirely sure. I don't entirely sure what rod means in this. No, I'm sure it's something else. Maybe there's another stat we're not aware of because you and I would, just.
Well, there used to be saving throws versus magic, saving throws versus breath weapons. Maybe. You used to have different ways of doing saving throws.
Or describing them, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't like based on your skills. They were based on particular attributes of what's being you're hit by, if you know what I mean.
But then the thing is, so obviously then you get, obviously if you get hit or whatever, successful saving throw only affects half damage. So you've somehow survived being like hit by a lightning bolt. But then because of the thunderclap that follows a lightning strike, a second saving throw is required to avoid deafness that lasts 2d4 rounds.
Yes.
So I don't think it's as safe as people think. It is literally you're in a huge, fuck off thundercloud.
Yeah, you're in a Faraday cage, basically.
Yeah, you're just there like
that little thing you used to put your hands on in the 90s, where the little lightning balls came to your fingers.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was thinking of the one in physics where you put your hand on this and your hair stands on end.
No.
The Faraday cage. Yeah.
They were really cool. Those I love those.
Except there's no barrier. You become the barrier.
You are. Ultimate power.
Power.
But yeah. And so unless you can have some sort of it doesn't give you a spell. I don't remember in this.
It doesn't.
But a lot of other ones that we come onto in the Quasielemental Planes give you particular spells that help you deal with those things. And I'm sure your DM would help aid in the fact that you can have protection from heat, from fire. I think you could find, you can get protection from lightning as class features sometimes. I know that there's particular feats that you can get that you can allow you to get protection or resistance from particular elements, isn't there? So I think things like that would be obviously useful, and some species-based abilities as well that do that as well. So you could so I assume it does say protection from lightning, sorry, and similar spells render the target immune to electricity.
Oh, but it doesn't give us much
thunder.
detail about it, though.
Yeah.
And like I said, not the thunder, so you're constantly at risk of getting
But you should say,
deafened.
like, if you plug your ears with, like, wax. Like, they should be, like, you could find these people that sell these particular waxy things that come from ooze
ear
or something
defenders,
like that. Yeah, exactly. Or mineral ear defenders that, like, absorb
sparkly ones, like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. You've got beats on.
Oh, gosh. The other thing to note as well is that the range of vision also changes depending on how thick the clouds are around you in terms of the wind, etc. But there will be, as I said, a light electrical halo appears around any matter in the quasi-plane. A natural illumination, so there's no need for torches or magical light. So there's always a little bit of a light around you, just a little halo. But that makes invisibility completely useless. Which again, I like that as an idea. It's like, yes, you might be like, haha, we need to sneak up on one of these. Like, if you need to get to the eye, for example, maybe you're going to sneak over there. There's no chance you're gonna. People will be able to see you because they'll see your outline essentially. Which I thought I quite like that as a little effect.
It's a nice thing, and you can kind of imagine it like those when you get those little haloed effects from light on cameras. It's kind of how I imagine it. Those sort of little things. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But as you said, breathing is pretty good. Vision is relatively good as well, as you said, and the aura it makes invisibility as well utterly useless. But there are other dangers in the form of lightning balls, which are tiny dancing constructs of energy. These rare and chaotic formation strike as lightning bolts, but a successful saving throw indicates the target creature dodges the ball and suffers no damage. So unlike lightning, you don't take half damage. But they like to follow targets and striking every round until they finally discharge, which it then doesn't give you like, oh, well,
how long does
it take to discharge?
Yeah.
But, you can...
Because the thing is that I'm not entirely sure, are these things, they're not sentient, it's just a phenomena, right?
Yeah.
So, which I think is fine, but I do think in that case, then you definitely need a table of like they last 2d4 rounds or something like that. If you're going into an area of, so it doesn't even tell you how frequent these things are compared to being struck by lightning. Because I like the idea that if they were sentient, that they are going to follow you, and it's like a little swarm, and more of them appear. Hey, listen. What are you doing here? Exactly. I had that voice in my head as well when we were thinking about it. So I think I like those ideas, but again, it doesn't give you much about like what else you could do with them. Can you avoid them fully, or because especially will they just have to keep outrunning them? Do they have a speed? So I thought that was interesting. But then
it's pretty cool.
I've got to be honest. Maybe I'm just being slightly not understanding this concept. What are plasma pockets? Like, I don't really know what that is.
I just imagine it is like a liquid that's like really condensed, liquefied energy. So it's like a plasma, like in movies, like plasma movies.
Okay.
So like liquid energy that is like it condenses, gathers within a cloud. So I imagine it's like where if you get like I'd put it like you get this huge storm cloud, but it's like so dark and it's so small, like a black hole like type of cloud, and in the middle of that is where you would find plasma pockets, where it's like this orb of like roiling electrical energy, or like Alec Mack puddles of electricity or something like that, like that you would then, which maybe someone could, I think it'd be kind of cool if you'd say like you can collect them or something like that if you wanted to. Would be kind of
there'd be something like a mining like
that you
resource.
could pour over your sword as a thing.
So you're saying it's almost like a negative energy thing, so almost like that negative, like inverse negative filter. Is that what you were thinking? That's kind of
cool. Well, no, I was just thinking like it's just super dense, hyper dense.
Oh, like, hyper dense rather than
like hyper dense.
Because for me, I'm now going plasma. Oh, magma. That's what it is in my head, and I'm like that's not what it is at all. Because it's not a heat thing. No. So that's why I'm thinking like when you described it, it's like that sort of darkness to it. But I would like that inverse effect of the color.
Well, it could be that, so that like draws energy out of you would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like it's a super dense and it's just trying to like suck in more energy, and so what you do is it draws like the electrical potential out of your like nervous system or something like that. Could be a way you deal with it.
Well, because that's what it talks about. It talks about, like, if you stumble into one, it's 20d10 points of just damage. It doesn't tell you, again, what kind of damage, but it's almost like a flash frying effect.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I was thinking of that sort of inverse, like,
I
color
like
effect. Because it reminds me of, I'm going to bring it back to Doctor Who, so Daleks, when they exterminate someone, they'll throw out a death ray or whatever, and it hits someone, and they always describe it as like, they sort of like that.
Yeah.
And then the colors change to that sort of like negative effect, and you see their entire skeleton. So that's what I imagine. That's what I imagine on that front. Yeah.
Yeah, I do imagine that effect. When you said, like, when the thing, I was imagining that, the skeleton to sort of thing happening.
Yeah, exactly that. But that's kind of it in terms of like the physical conditions, hazards, and stuff. So again, not too much different to what we expected. But like I said, I don't think it's as safe as people think it is, because you have to remember that this is a place of sheer raw energy. On that front.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think so it's fucking dangerous. But and then on top of that, there's we said about moving about, but the inhabitants then is there are life, and it again unfortunately doesn't really go into too much detail, so we don't know how much they do. But as with every plane, there are mephits, and there are lightning mephits, which are frenetic, and you can imagine they've got tiny kingdoms. Rarely, in fact, is one of these creatures encountered alone. They get along well with all the quasi-elementals and shockers, which it talks about later. Which are quite fun. And then it does say, like, it gives names of which things I don't know, like the Mreb, which sound like tentacled ore beings that never attract lightning, but they often grab anything that approaches them and throw it into energy bolts.
They're like, no, thank you. Like these little sacrifices that they do. I imagine them as some sort of weird kind of octopus type creature, or almost like how bacteria looks as well. That idea that suddenly like a little tendril comes out that screeches loud and brings it in and goes.
I was thinking like a grell, but I like
grell,
that as well.
Of course, that makes more sense. Yeah.
And then the Un was really cool.
Yeah, the Un. So I love this idea that they're described as like insects that live within lightning itself. An observer finds it extremely hard to difficult to discover this fauna because their lifespan spans between 4 to 16 milliseconds, because that's how long a lightning bolt is. That's wild. I can't even imagine how I would describe that to players.
I don't think you do. I think that's just flavor, isn't it? That like there's just a fauna that it gets electrified, releases its spores when it gets electrified. The next time that electric happens, they live and then they release spores. So maybe again it could be like collecting the spores, and then when you get, I don't know, have you seen Star Trek Discovery? Yeah. They've got the animal that eats the spore, and then it does the time travel, the space travel thing. Is you could do something like that, like collect these spores, and if you collect enough of them and contain them in a large area, you realize if you do electrical lightning spells or something, or you add them to your materials, your components for spells that require lightning, then you can double the effect of all your lightning or something like that. You know what I mean? Or something along those lines. So it's just like, if you collect them, then you chuck them into your spell out into the area of effect, basically is how you flavor it, and by doing that you electrify them, and then they duplicate their energy power or something like that. It could be just, I've made that up. I don't know.
I like that. Like they sort of add to like an aura of effect that you release them as they invade another person's space, and therefore either they just disadvantage on something, or
or maybe gives
attacks.
you like the ability to if you had a spell that's like lightning bolt, what you could do is, if you throw those out, you do your bonus action to throw them out, then you cast the lightning bolt, then you can hit up to 3 creatures, because what it does is it like refracts the lightning or something like that. Could be just a way to add sorcerer style bonus, what they called sorcerer point style things to lightning effects or something.
That's interesting. I think overall, like, the thing I take away from all these creatures, again, because there's very little on them in terms of like anything about their history or anything like that, the whole sort of thing with the quasi-elementals, I think the words that come to me, they says playful and distressingly chaotic. So again, if I was doing that role play things where if for whatever reason you managed to talk to some of those lightning quasi-elementals and those sort of methods, so that the sort of frantic energy, obviously, but they are establishing tiny kingdoms amidst the storm clouds. So again, that idea that you do come in, you're like, hey, what's going on? Hey, you're just like constantly, like, as if you've had too much coffee. That's how I was thinking, like, if I were doing any sort of role play to them. I think that was the only thing. And just taking that.
It's just like super energetic, always moving from one over the top ADHD sort of attitude in a way.
Absolutely. But let's talk about shockers then, because
Yes.
again, it's another thing that's sort of added on at the end. So they're a complex culture. They involve sort of two different classes. I'm going to say this word wrong because I always say it wrong. Is it sojourners or something like that? Who like to travel? I don't know. That word always.
I'd say
Sojourners.
sojourners.
I think sojourners. Yeah. So they like to travel the cosmos, and then the contented ones who like to remain in lightning. So obviously, you're more likely to experience talking to the contented ones rather than the other lot. They're peaceful, but have no concept of time, and spend a large portion of their existence in the form of lightning bolts that arc from place to place. So, if anything, I like the idea that they're just like the super peaceful one. It's just like almost like a rainbow effect when they go to places like ooh, as a result.
I like that. They're kind of cool. I think the shame is though that that's all we get on them, and it's like, can you talk to them? Can you interact with them? It says they're always peaceful, have no concepts of time, and they as you said, in the existence of form of lightning bolts. So do you even recognize that they're different from a lightning bolt? Is there a way to determine that? Do they move at different speed, or what other form do they take when they're not in lightning bolt form? Can they take on any form? Just things like little bit more information would have been really useful to help you feel like you could interface with them.
It's especially obviously when this book came out, we didn't have stuff like the internet, where obviously now I could go up and look up what a shocker is, etc., and find out where I can find out more about them. For me, I would have to go buy probably the advanced monster manual or whatever. So it does feel a bit like, unless there was another book that we're not aware of, like in a box set, there was like, here's some extra ones, because I know sometimes that's what happens with like Curse of Strahd. I always go back to, but like they'll say, like, here's Curse of Strahd book, and then here's all the monsters that come specifically with the Curse of Strahd thing, so you don't have to look them up, that are beyond the normal sort of like merchants, like bandits, all that sort of thing. So I agree, it does feel a bit like, these are cool, don't know anything else about them. But again, as always, these things we say like, well, maybe they're telling us to go, you should go and make your own thing about them. But
they're very, when you read more about them, they are quite interesting, and the imagery of them is either like a humanoid which has got like electrical lightning around them, but there's one image which looks something a bit like Predator meets a piece of armor, with like ram's ears, but they're all like metallic, and they look quite cool.
Okay.
And they've got lightning coming out, and it says additional things are like they are composed of electrical energy, and they can always put a part of themselves, the innate ability to extend a portion of themselves into any other plane of existence by touching and then to discharge electricity wherever they want. So they can just go to another plane and just give out, so let go of some energy, or touching another creature going through them into the plane that they're from, I think is what it says.
Oh, wow.
Just cool.
Ooh, that'd be a horrible experience.
Which is kind of weird, but
cool, interesting.
And if you slay one, they will leave behind a bit of grey metallic dust.
Oh, that's so good.
I know, but exactly. It's just like, as you said, we had that with the other parts of planes where they had separate books and books with them, but maybe it's just it just feels like these particular ones, would they really be in the monster manual?
I don't
doubt
know.
It.
I don't know.
It feels
maybe we're missing something on that front, but I'm not so sure. But they sound interesting.
I double checked through the order of the in planes, and couldn't find anything as well. So I think
it's just us then. Oh. Well, and as we said, and as you sort of said as well, there are creatures that obviously populate the realm of the lightning, but they don't seem to, if anything. So there's no like deities or anything like that. No. The storm gods that visit every so often. Yeah. But I think the thing that it sort of talks about right at the end is that those that populate lightning, they don't necessarily value individuality, so there's no need for them to be like, I am so and so, this is my realm, etc. So there's more of a collective mind, almost like a hive mind, because it's sort of all that energy you were saying before that sort of draws together and gets attracted to bits, and it consumes, trying to bring that energy in. So if anything, I know this is like another wild cultural reference, but sometimes when you get adverts on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and it's one of those games where you have to eat as much as possible, and to eat so much as possible, and then kill off other people who have eaten less, and just become more and more powerful. That's what I imagine. It is just more drawing anything in. Yes. It doesn't matter who or what you are. You're just going to add to this collective consciousness of energy.
I like that. That's kind of cool. Well, and then we've got places to go see.
Yeah, so we talked about one already, which is this Tower of Storms, which is it's And something I didn't realize, and I appreciate we've come very late into this that I realized this, but basically what I do, I take the words off the PDF and I write notes about them. I don't necessarily look at the images. I've only just realized that on our little maps of stuff, it tells you where all these sites are. I didn't realize that for ages. But the Tower of Storms is literally in the positive energy, like on the barrier of it. It is sticking out. This ancient tower projects literally out of the wall of energy that marks the absolute border with the plane of the positive energy. It's glistening. It's electric blue. It's composed of an unknown element and offers no way in. But the natives of the plane, particularly the Mephits, have no doubt that something or someone dwells within. And I'm like, but why?
Fuck's sake.
Give us something. Like, does it move?
Don't make everything the GM. This is literally like, here's like half a sentence, GM do the rest work, you know, all the time.
Because, like, what if, does it seem to be getting bigger or rounder? Does there seem to be more layers? Does a door appear? Does appear once every century? I don't know. It just feels like, what a cool thing that there's no way the players, if the players can't find a way in, they're gonna, or if they're gonna go, we'll go in from the opposite end. We'll go into the positive elemental plane. Maybe they have to work a way to get in, and there's the back door. But then to be in the positive energy plane, you have to battle being like filled up with energy in order to get past some sort of point. I don't know. Yeah. It's a shame.
It's a real shame. It is a real shame, and it really annoys me constantly because I also think like people paying money for this book, and you're getting basically lists,
half ideas.
It's basically half ideas, and it's pretty much like a list video on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of as much information you're getting on it. Is like 10 weird things to see in the elemental plane of lightning, and it's like
this one,
Tower of Storms, the eye, and you're like, what was that?
What's cool about it? Where should we go? Can't get in.
No, that's it. So that's really annoying. And then you got the eye, which takes on that point of like it's the center of a storm. It says obviously that the concept of a center of any infinite plane is fallacious. However, then it has a map that puts it in the center of the map. But whatever, we'll just go away. We'll go from that. And as with all tempest, the eye is free of torrents of wind and bolts of lightning. And it's an area that it's got a bit of. It said its spellcaster might have created it. It gives a funky death rate scale, but it's got a floating chunk of stone, which might have come from either the plane of earth or mineral, upon which someone has built a village and offers shelter and services to those who are traveling through. So I think that's where you would want to put people as a starter point. Again, loads of these haven points coming up later and later and no information about them.
Not even a name for this village.
Yes.
Like, it's just we're just in this area of the eye of the storm. Yeah. It's like, give the village a name. It'd be nice to know. Like,
yeah, I really would love someone to remake this.
I think another look at the quasi-elemental planes for sure, and just add like another 200 words just to fill out, finish some sentences off.
And modern day ability to map make would be good to add to this as well. I think it would just help so much because it's like having a map of that town and giving us like a tavern and peoples.
Who is there?
The mayor.
Like, is it one of those like you hear about like go and be the post office in the Arctic and it's run by 3 people. And you can offer, hey, if I go there I'll be paid lots of money, but that's 6 months out of the thing, and then something happens there. Like that for me is a story. Like, well, who goes here? Why is there a post office in the middle of the elemental plane of lightning? I put that there now, and I think it should be there. So
I think that works because now what I'd say is the shockers are the delivery people because they love to travel all the planes, and so you use them to transmit messages, and this is the center point of messages throughout the universe.
But you don't go first class with them because they'll take bloody ages because they're just like taking their time and no concept of time. So you might get a message within 2 seconds, or it might take several centuries. You don't know.
Exactly. It's but that's part of the fun and joy of using the lightning. Yeah, I
like that. Yeah, it is called like lightning bolt or something like that. The postal service.
Yes. Yeah, bolt. Just bolt.
Bolt. Yeah. So the last little bit is obviously planeswalkers. Any sort of advice for planeswalkers in the plane of lightning? Some say it's to charge magical items. Mine, I'm gonna say this one, Vividium, sorry, which is a rare substance again that's found in storm clouds. And you're like, that sounds good. But then it says many of whom seem to possess the secrets regarding manipulation of energy for useful purposes. It's like, cool. is there an evil sorcerer in that Tower of Storms that's manipulating positive energy in some way? That's what it feels like it is now. I think that's a really interesting substance that's not mentioned anywhere else. There's always like, you just come here for this magical substance that does this. And we've had that in a few other planes as well. And it's just a bit like, I just need a little bit more information about it. Because I'm all for finding rare substances, because that's what in the earlier planes we were looking at, say, we need the hottest fire imaginable to make a very strong armor or a very strong shield, etc. And like, is this part of the fetch quest where we have to get to this particular element to imbue an item with magic that can only be found here, if you see what I mean? So that's what I thought would come to mind here.
Yeah, I think that's what we were saying at the earlier as well. Is like, and they've done it with other parts of the quasi and para-elemental planes of giving you these. It's charging. We've talked constantly throughout the whole of this process. Like, it's where you come to forge a super sword. It's where you come to gain some particular mineral or effect or quality of the elemental plane itself. You're literally mining in all the planes, no matter which one, if it's air or it's in the earth. And so, yeah, the fetch quest is the simplest form of thing. Yeah. It's funny that it then doesn't. If that's really all it's giving us, because it's not giving us places to come to, not giving us like really too many power struggles in these later ones. They should give you more about what Vividium does.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. Is it in every storm cloud? Is it actually quite common, or it's just very dangerous to get? Is it rare? Like, we have to do it like every 5%
you it? Yeah. Is it dangerous?
If you are hit by too many lightning bolts, do you turn into this stuff?
Great, love that. Yeah. Or if you sacrifice like a magical weapon to the lightning bolt, does that turn into Vividium, or does it?
I'm guessing it's gold value. It's priceless because it must be so dangerous to get. That's the thing. Cause that's why they've not given anything. But yeah, that's the only thing I was like, it's quite a great name. Obviously, I can't say it, but. And then the final thing, as always, I always talk about spell keys because I whilst we don't necessarily use them anymore, I do find them really interesting. And I think now that I think about it, obviously we've got spell scrolls now, and you can always choose to like describe the spell scrolls in different ways and stuff like that. I just think like maybe going forward, what I would do is like, it is spell keys that I would use as a spellcaster and be able to use stuff. So like before we talked about some planes use it as like bits of glass or smoke and incense, etc. Here it is unique forms. It's a unique form. It's bursts of energy, and you need something called an accumulator for it, which again falls into that whole thing of like weather watching and tracking and that sort of thing. So again, now I think, God, why don't I play a character whose background is I was going to say weather forecaster, but that's not what I mean. I know there's a more scientific
meteorologist.
Meteorologist, that's what I was. Yeah, exactly. Why don't we have like an or weather?
Or a geologist, a meteorologist.
Yes, exactly. A balloonist. Why not? We'll just have a balloon going through. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So that's what I thought.
Paleontologist for them.
When you go
fossils.
when you go to mineral, you'll need one of those for sure. So I quite like this idea that you have to have a particular device, which again is a fetch quest in itself, and making it yourself, because that particular device, the accumulator, only works in the lightning plane. It simply fails to work, and then it overloads immediately in the positive plane, causing damage, which then you'd cause damage to you holding it, but then you probably won't take that damage because your health bar's going back up. So I like the idea that it works too well and it just explodes.
See, I think it's really, I love that, and I think why you've got this thing, why is that not now like another thing that could be like, okay, if you've got an accumulator, it will draw any electrical energy that's coming to you, but if you give it XD 10 rounds, you have to roll every round for like once you get to 10 rounds, you have to then roll a dice, and it's got like a 1%, a 20, a 1 in 20, then it goes to 5 in 20, then etc. If you leave it too long without expelling any of its energy, and in that round you must take damage if you are, you know what I mean, or or something like that, or if you can keep triggering it, and that's how it accumulates and stops you getting electrically. So you give everyone these accumulator backpacks or something like that, like Ghostbusters.
I was gonna say proton packs. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it sort of gives you 10 rounds of like feeding energy, but on round 11 or before that, you have to discharge that energy somehow.
I do like that. Yes, use your action to vent it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. Yeah. I love that.
And if you get grappled, then that could be the tension point, is that you get grappled, you know that Well, it's been 10 rounds. Uh-oh, you're going to somehow press the button. Can you press the button? And if you can't, then it's going to explode or something like that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's pretty good. So that's lightning. So that's all good. Next up, though, let's go from lightning to mineral. What can we find in the quasi-elemental plane of mineral?
Well, as you would expect, it's basically like the plane of Earth if the Earth was made of gems and rare precious metals and all those sorts of things arranged in a formation like the other ones around its relationship to the other borders of other planes. So mineral is the relationship between Earth and positive energy. And we have a nice, interesting, blunt and simplistic narrator, as they name them here, Gadin Hammerhome, prime dwarf miner, who ended up, it gives him a little story here of how he ended up from his prime material plane, falling through a hole into the outlands, and then from the outlands met up with these lovely folk who then sent him into a mine that took him to the mineral plane, and he keeps going back and forth and doing little jobs, going to collect things and coming back. And it's a nice little story. And again, like the other plane, the lightning plane, this one very much acts based a lot on its prime plane, if that's the word, of Earth, where, it's all about digging. There's no air to breathe. If you dig, you have the same gravitational effects, that gravity comes from everywhere, so you can walk all the way around. But unlike Earth, it's much harder to dig here. And then there's also further hazards in the fact that, gems and precious metals are sharp and painful and will hurt you.
Yeah, it's the treasure that bites back, essentially. But I like it how
did you make that up? The treasure that bites back. I like that. That should be its tagline. The plane of mineral, treasure that bites back.
But because it does talk about it. This is the treasure trove of the multiverse, which is described this, which I quite like. But just to quickly go to the map, because I know you've described a little bit of like the general conditions there. So the map in this, before it always says like, okay, so this is the border between like ooze and core mineral is called sparkle mire. Between magma and the mineral, it is the natural forge, etc. It doesn't actually give a name for the mineral and earth border. It just says unnamed border, and I'm like, come on, bit lazy. I feel like that's a bit annoying, that because they've gone through so much to give things to other people and be like, oh yeah, let's read it. Like, are you gonna do it for all of them or none of them? I feel so. I did again. I wouldn't have seen that if I hadn't looked at the map to put this one. And I was like, oh. Okay, I guess that's that. Because what happens obviously with the text, sometimes I find it really difficult to be like, okay, so where are we in the big sphere? So that's why I have to look at these really good like drawings of this sort of cross-sectional stuff. But there's no name for that border. But you have stuff like Bright Home, which is mineral and radiance border. The Misty Caverns, which I quite like, between steam and mineral. And then finally, positive energy and mineral is the gem fields. So again, some really nice names there.
When you get to Radiance, unlike any others, Radiance's relationship to mineral is also called Bright Home. When you get to that plane. Whilst in the other ones, I checked and it's not the same. Like the ooze to mineral isn't called, I don't believe is called Sparkle Mire. I'm just going to double check that when I go to ooze quickly. Ooze and mineral is called the slag marshes. So in there, so it has got a different name. But it's just interesting to note that this one, it shares the border between mineral and radiance is the same on both sides of that planar shift.
But we'll just sort of say with Sparkle Mire in general, because this is where, like, as we said, it has become sort of like an underground sea of mud and ooze, with you said, like the sparkling gems and crystals, and those crystals will, like you said, they'll cut a fella up. But I'm just trying to think, because again, I can just imagine like you can see all these beautiful crystals of like falling, like you fall perhaps, and all the gems and stuff that you got, they sort of fall and they get sucked down by things. You're trying to grasp at them in the mud as you slowly surely sink down. I just have this weird image. It's of a film, and I can't remember the name of it just at the top of my head, where there's like a crown that's slowly sinking into mud, and the person tries to grab it and then doesn't, and it just like, oh, the whole point of the quest is completely gone as a result. I don't know. I want to say the Mummy, but I don't think it's the Mummy. It's that, because there's no ooze in ancient Egypt per se. So I'm gonna have to look it up later, but I can't think of exactly what it is.
I can't think of it either. It doesn't ring any bells.
No, don't worry. I think this might be also a Fiona made up image in her head. So
But the other thing with that is, again, I know I'm being a bit of a Debbie Downer today, but
No.
there's it talks about the gem field, which is the relationship between the positive energy plane and the mineral field, and this is where the gems glow like little stars, and the closer you get, the more they glow until the gems go away and there is only glow. It then says the border between mineral and the plane of radiance is the same as gem field. It's called Bright Home.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, okay. That's
but it takes on a bit of a glow. You're like, okay, thank you for that. But because the thing that I would have made in my head with the difference is the positive energy plane. I would have made it to like they hold some energy within these gems. So the gems are magical in nature, and so and that if you when you take a gem, they create healing potential, and you can use them as like a healing stone. And that's how I would have done it. Whilst the radiance one would be the glowy one. Do you know what I mean? And they're just twinkling stars hanging in space of just these gems. They have no magical property, but if you touch them, they electrocute you or something like that. You know, there's a bit of lightning hidden in them or something. Whilst the positive energy plane could be more of a healing thing, I think could be kind of nice. But that's all I'd take from to differentiate them. I do like the name Sparkle Mire. It's probably my favorite.
I agree. I quite like Sparkle Mire.
It's kind of like grim but also beautiful in its own way, so I quite like that. And the unnamed border, just a counterpoint here, I kind of get the reason for it in some respects, because it's that sort of, they keep talking about how you don't really know when you've moved from Earth to mineral, because when you're in Earth you will find minerals. But I think, but again, I'm also on the other hand still agree that it would be nice to give it a name, which would be like something like the mineral road, or like, do you know what I mean? So like, or the vein of something, you know, like the, what do you call it when you find veins of minerals? But you know, there's probably like a name you could call it that has
like some sort of a kind of rock. Again, this is where the three kinds of rock I never remember them off the top of my head, but a mixture of those names, perhaps. I guess
I can't remember the gods of dwarves because I've got them mixed up with, I know the gods of dwarves in Warhammer now too much, so like,
oh no.
But like, if you maybe it was like took a dwarven god's name and gave it like you know, or this guy's called Heldenhammer, like Heldenhammer's Road, or the Hellhammer Vein, or something like that, which is like the god's like route through the minerals, and it's kind of a road that you can take. If you follow this vein, you will find your way into the plane of minerals, but it's elusive and it moves its location amongst Earth at all times. So once you found it, you may never find it again, and it's kind of like and the magma is quite a nice one as well. Natural forge. So
that's what I was about to say, was that it's quite nice because compared to all the other ones, which are all sort of like I said, solids, or they're gems, or this and the other, this is molten stuff. So if you were like, I need to get we have ore, or we need to find ore, and it's like, hey, it's dangerous, it's really hot, but we could get all the stuff there. Maybe we could set up a quick forge. No, I know forges aren't quick to do, but it's that idea, like, let's get the best blacksmith, or get a favor. We can try and do something here, and then if any materials we need, we can easily go into the mineral plane. Maybe go into Earth, perhaps. But I feel like that's a cool base that we'd be like, there's someone set up shop there, and they're like, if I'm here for 2 days, if you can get all the materials to me, I will make whatever item you need. You know,
this again was where if we did this big Earth map, and you would have this as a zone where people have caverned out this huge thing. There's a huge forge built into it, and there's a big steam pipe that goes up into a plane of the plane of steam or something like that, and that's where they're pumping and venting out all the steam. And they've also got water portal from the plane of water that helps cool it down. And here is where you find this huge, you know, citadel of people forging, with this magma flow coming in with these gorgeous slag pits of, like, you know, that sort of, if you've ever seen like the liquid metal with the sort of like bits of slag coming off the edge of it and dropping down, and the ground is all filtered through with magma in rills going through the city to all these different forges. And when you're there, you've got like Heldenhammer's home of the forge, and you've got Brunny's huge forge of excellency, and you've got these like competing
amazing, like big market, like
warring
style,
families that are all like vying for and there's maybe one that's like got the ultimate power, which is this, had been there from the beginning, and the founding family of the city, which has got the hugest forge and is buying up everyone's forge, and there's clandestine things going between all the forge kings. and queens that run these different forges, and that's the political intrigue, and that's where you come into, and you've got to, and like, and when you come into the city, the evil big corporation come up to you and say, oh, you look like adventurers, you want to make a bit of coin, I'd like to take out, I'm looking to make someone disappear, like that, and no one knows who you are, and you can either take on that thing or you could go tell the other people, and that's that's what we want from this.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's really added a lot of flavor to it. Just to quickly go on to like getting there. So as you said, this particular person who we've got their account from, they came here from the Outlands, through falling through or finding a cavern to get here. But here, there's also, they talk about, they talked about that. Yeah, this deep chasm called the Gem Gate, which felt, what a great name. So again, I can imagine. Again, it doesn't really describe like, do you need a way to like open it? We've had ways of like opening portals and stuff before, but I like the idea that it is just like the most gaudy thing you've ever seen. It is like stuck into like gems into the stone, like constantly pressed in, and maybe you need to press them in a certain order, or I don't know, set an intention. I don't know, but just anything with crystals, I instantly think of like those crystal shops and gems. So that's why I'm like, oh, you have to be like, I am brave, and then
but
just
that's
go
why
the...
I don't think that's why it's a real shame that radiance and positive don't play on that a bit of
yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
You can have gems that have different, maybe there's a gems of ooze which help, like if you take a gem from the Sparkle Mire and you bring it to the positive energy plane, it imbues it with protection from poison or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like the idea, because now I've got thinking about mantras. Like you pick up like an ooze gem and it's like, I am enough.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a horrible.
Yeah, but maybe that's it. Maybe it gives you like this different energies that you can. I think they haven't played enough with mineral in this.
I think, you know what? Sorry, I keep going back to ooze now, but because we talked about with the ooze stuff, that those methods and stuff, I keep going around to people going, please polymorph me. I don't want to be like this. So I like the idea that we have gems going, I don't like me for me. I am enough, but I can't be enough. Like
maybe you have to get one. If you give one of those gems to the methods, then it's like, I am enough.
I am enough. Yeah. But it's like one of those magic items where you're like, oh, it's got some benefit or minor benefit, etc. But the curse is you constantly have to say mantras to yourself but you don't believe them or something like that. Like
I like that. That's really good. Yeah.
Oh, right. We've gone completely off topic, but I like the
very off topic.
I love that.
There are some hazards. We did mention that some of them are very sharp. It does say, I can't remember which of the areas it says that they are very sharp crystals, and
I think it is Sparkle Mire, but to be honest, I would put that to any of these places. Exactly. Like the gem fields in general could be quite sharp, but like because you heal, like you were saying that healing stuff, you heal instantly. But maybe the Misty Cavern probably has some stuff in there as well.
Yes, exactly. But breathing is the same as Earth, as we mentioned. There's no light except near the planes of radiance positive, so it's hard to see. But sound, again, travels very well, so you can hear things. And it's 60 feet. And if you, with keen hearing, which is an ability, is increased to 90 feet. And fossilization, though, this is the thing. When you stay here for too long, anyone not from the plane must make a saving throw versus petrification each day or slowly grind to a halt and turn to stone. And so that means some of the minerals that you might find here were once people.
Yeah, and just don't worry about it too much. Or think too hard about it. I think it's the ethics of it not great. But I guess for me, how many saves is it before you become totally petrified? That's the only thing I would say. Is I would like to have a little bit. Well, no, but like, is it like?
Yeah, I know. I was saying make it your Constitution modifier.
Oh, yeah. But like, no, absolutely. Yeah. And if you like. Is it like once you've started the process, like if you keep saving, then it's just continuing your constitution, because it talks about being sturdy and stalwart, etc. That keeps it at bay. But then, is there some effect like I don't know, your big toe is made of stone now, and then you have to, when you get back to the actual plane, like you don't have to make any saves anymore, but you have to go get your toe seen to. You know what I mean? Like I'd like a little bit more detail around it, because I love this idea that this is a great scary place to be, because otherwise you'd be like, well, why don't we just come here all the time? But if you've got, like you said, low constitution and you miss 3 saves in a row, oh no, Terry is now
Jemmy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
And but yeah, I think that's it needs, again, we're just saying it every time, a little bit, just a couple of sentences more sometimes would just be all it needs. Whilst we then get real table on how
digging,
packed the soil is and how strong you need to be to get through it, which is fine, and how much you need to roll to get through. And then it does give you if you go through gem encrusted areas, you take 1d4 points of damage. You can get magical protection that reduces that. But really, it's not. I mean, it's not worth going through.
I feel like, if anything, because obviously the way this point of view is it describe this particular dwarf as someone who just gives facts and stuff, but also then the editor has to jump in quite a bit to explain stuff. So again, I wonder if that's an excuse for like someone didn't write all the stuff, so we're going to have to do a bit of editing around it, or that. That they are focused, like, it makes sense that maybe this particular person is focused on digging because that's what they have to do. That's why you get a table for it. And I'm like, that's not the most interesting thing about this plane.
And it's great as a bit, but also we bought this book to learn stuff about an interesting place to go.
And I don't care about bits.
You can't use your like excuses. Well, I was playing a boring character, that's why it was boring. And you're like, well,
it's called growth.
My character's annoying. That's why I'm being annoying.
Yes,
good.
That's how it works.
Yes, that's what we want at our tables. So, inhabitants. There are quasi-elementals, which it gives quite a funny way of talking about it. The Kagra, who come here from the plane of Earth, which we've met before, and we met them in Earth, and they come here and eat all up the minerals, whilst the actual quasi-elementals of this plane, which will be mineral elementals, I assume.
Just doesn't really say.
Doesn't say. Are very angry about it. But other than that, they try to defend it from them. But they're organized like a military and real tough in a fight. So you just imagine sort of mineral style methods. They're harder to hit.
Yeah. I think if anything, it says that anything like you think like a squirrel or bird, it's like that, but with like a very tough exterior. So the advice is, when you come into any of these creatures, just come with a good sharp axe, come with sharp weapons, because you might need that for combat, which I did felt was quite funny. And like the conversation around it, like going, hey, if you're not here, you're a bit of a clueless burk if you don't do any of this stuff. Again, I can just imagine someone talking to me who is a miner, who goes down to things, and then they're like, you want to come here? Right. Make sure you do this, otherwise I'm not taking care of you. You got to take care of yourself because I've got better things to be doing. So again, little bits and pieces. Again, funny bits perhaps, but not enough to give me enough information if I was like a DM trying to quickly research or something on the plane of mineral.
So there's other creatures here, which it says there's the Sing, which are the people that look like crystals. And they're not friendly to miners, and they really like magic, and that's all we get. And then the mineral methods gives them a bit more about their selfishness, self-importance, and a bit greedy.
I feel like we are coming to the plane to also take stuff.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't know if it's greedy or selfish. I feel like it's like that's ours.
Exactly.
That's all I'd say on that front. Yeah.
I think that's it, and then the Tao, which are the sort of the genies from the plane of Earth. And Pex, which we met in the plane of Earth as well, which is the one which was in the Dritz novel.
Yes, Well, we've not recorded the second one of the Dritz novel yet, but now I know all about them, and I feel quite sad every time I see that word. So
yes, exactly. It says the Tao worked out a pact with the quasi-elementals, who then allows them to go free where they like and take what they want, which is interesting. What you wonder what they're giving in return. So that would be kind of
absolutely. So so there's lots of little little things, little tidbits, which again I think you're right. I think this could have been fed into the elemental plane of Earth because of all that these sort of wars between the Tao and the Jinn and all the genies essentially at each other. So I feel like that would have been a better move rather than having it, because obviously it's expecting us to have read those previous elemental planes, which obviously we have done, but I can imagine if you're be like, oh, I want to find out more about this seems quite cool, or they have randomly come here, it's like, oh, I don't know any of the politics about this place.
Yeah, exactly. But it gives you Christelle, though, doesn't it? As Christelle, who's a powerful creature that looks like the quasi-elemental and has a huge castle. But says they're defended by loads of quasi-elementals and Chrismals, which are the crystal animals, and golems made of gold and silver, and even mithril. But very peaceful, generally good and kind ruler. It doesn't have any plans to invade the material plane or anything like that, unlike others. And then you get a few little informations of like, oh, there's also there's other castles. There are some secret dwarven mines, but I'm not going to tell you where those are. And then the Tower of Lead, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, this big grey tower that just juts up right out of the ground in a region they call the Gem Field. So again, that near the positive energy plane. Oh, maybe then. Am I being a fool? And maybe it's the opposite end of the Tower of Storms. Like, is it? Do you know what I mean? I don't think so, because obviously we'll have the plane of energy there, but there's now two towers coming out of the
No, because that's where
or am I being
lightning
silly?
meets energy.
Lightning meets energy, positive energy on one side, but then on the other side of the positive elemental plane, you have another tower.
I wonder.
So I just obviously the positive elemental plane and the positive elemental plane is in the middle. But I
Earth
wonder.
and air are opposite each other, aren't they?
That's what I assumed, right?
Yeah, because Earth is next to magma and water, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be. Ooh. I like it. There we go. That's cool.
But inside the tower there lies a beast forge, a huge forge, essentially, a dwarf seen short of Moradin's own. So Moradin is the king of dwarves in the god pantheon, the dwarf pantheon. Sorry, but there's no one knows high or well, but people that spend time in here disappear, presumably because they find a door that goes into the positive elemental plane, positive energy plane, and again gets blown up by positiveness. That's what I assume.
That's what I like. Yeah, but you always get whispers when you're in there, like Auntie Ethel style.
Yes, absolutely. Come here, dearie.
Come here, dearie. This way.
There's also tools inside this particular tower that no one knows how to use or what they are for, which I like the idea that, like you and me, we wouldn't necessarily know like all the different tools in a toolbox or say in a surgeon's kit or anything like that, and we'll just be like, it looks like, and you just do your best to describe stuff, but never mention its actual name, and then be like, there you go. What do you think you use that for?
Yeah,
that's what I would do in my head, almost like the game Operation. You'd be like, instead of like the different like bone stuff, you just get those names like, oh yes, the butterflies in the stomach. That's what you use this for. Like and give it a horrible tool with lots of spikes on it. I don't know. I was like, I like the idea of just being like, all these tools that you have no idea what they're used for, and you'd be like, well, I've got them now. I'll see what I can do with them. Whether it is for digging or whether it's for selling, I don't know. So.
Someone in Sigil will probably know how to use them. That's probably what I'd say.
That is true. Yeah. Any give them to any dwarves. I'm sure they'll find something to do. Use them for. And then finally, planeswalkers, like advice in general. What we've got like sort of like obvious reason is that you come here, get minerals, get rich. That's kind of it, really. There's like also some healing stuff, which you this is
kind of a bit like what I was talking about. But then he calls it the Glittermire, which I think means the Sparkle Mire.
I think he means the Sparkle Mire as well. Yeah.
And it says there's some healing loaves to be found there, which is kind of interesting that they'd be found in the Ooze one. But that's great. I went to fetch when a disease threat to wipe out the clan. And it says there's. Because I heard there's some dwarves that live here full time. Doesn't give you any information about where they are.
Yeah, no.
But they need guards and military people to look after against attacks from things, and they call them minders. So they work that as well as being just searching, which is kind of like they've got some sort of help. They want to be helpful. And then they say, oh, well, here we go. There's the place, Durast, which is a number of doors established a well-defended homestead. Our priests even blessed it, so no one inside petrifies. Only thing you'll have to find to remember is that keep it a secret and they don't abide any foolishness. And
which is great.
Great.
For any D&D games, constantly foolish people there.
Well, exactly.
But again, that would be nice to know because you might need to go there. Maybe it's next to Crystal's castle, perhaps, or I don't know. It just it's like that's quite a cool, interesting thing. Like
the forge or something. I don't know.
Near the natural forge. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that. And then
and then get your magical crystals.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I really like this. So yes, the spell keys on the planes, the material plane, on the plane of mineral. They're particular sounds produced by vibrating crystals. So 100% like you do various like ding and like symbols, etc., and then use the crystals. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I like that too.
Again, what would be nice? Again, maybe this is a bit too much cultural appropriation, perhaps. I don't know, because obviously I know crystals and the different kinds of crystals can mean different things. But I like the idea that, like, oh, we're going to ward off negative energy with a certain crystal, and like that, and that's what you use to detect good and evil, or to protection for good and evil. There you go. That's what I was thinking.
Or just the color grades of the crystals relate to the color grades of the dragons that produce different types of energy. So if you want to do a lightning spell, you need a blue crystal. So it's
yeah, I like that.
Or something like that. And then if you want to do fire, it's you need a ruby or something.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I like that as well. And then maybe the bigger the spell, or like the higher level of the spell, the bigger the crystal has to be. So if you've got a 9th level, you have to carry around a huge F off, like, big ruby crystal to be like fireball at 9th level.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to have a huge bag of
holding. Comes very useful as a magical component helper.
That's great. I do like that idea. Like, you take your turn to anything like that. You have to take your turn to ready an action to get your crystal out of the bag of holding, and then be like, "Don't break it."
Love it.
Brilliant. So I think overall, like, I'm quite, whilst you're right, I think we're a bit sort of negative about these particular planes, even though they are connected to the positive planes. Ha 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 ha. But I do think they are underwhelming. But what we've talked about today, I'm like, oh, that could be quite interesting. That quite interesting. So I'm glad for this book club, because otherwise we could just be like, ugh, and not think about it anymore. But I think we've got some ideas here where we're like, okay, where could we go in this if we would like to? So I
think that's the thing, and that's why I enjoy it as well, because talking it through with someone is so fun, because you're just sitting there reading these things and not getting anything. You're not getting anything in return back from the book as much as you want. So it's putting a lot on you. So having the opportunity to talk through it is really useful. And I think my closing point is very similar. It'd be just nice to have it'd be really love to see. If Planescape does return more in D&D, to see this, maybe like to have a really good planar book come out that re-looks at all these things, mainly the outer planes, because I think they are more interesting. But it would be great to see a really solid 3-part book of the inner, the outer, and the astral and ethereal planes guide for the next, at some point would be really cool.
I agree. Well, next time, Hamilton. So we're leaving our wonderful plane of mineral, and we're leaving the wonderful plane of lightning as well. Sorry, for some reason I completely forgot we'd just seen lightning there. Clearly, again, that sort of the shocker energy. Ooh,
still going on.
Time is a thing. So next up in our sort of quick journey, we're rounding off. We're not rounding off. So we're continuing on our quasi-elemental planes. We're going to go to radiance, and we're going to go to steam.
Yes, to the positives of fire and water.
Yes. So we're doing our little positives first, and then we're going to go to our wonderful negatives, which will be ash, dust, salt, and vacuum. Hoover.
my bet is vacuum's got the most stuff in it.
It probably has,
The irony
I'm very
of
excited.
It. Like, it's got 17 pages, so many information.
The map is just a black void that says vacuum.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, until next time, wonderful friends, if you look around, there'll be places where you can listen to the rest of this travel book club. Obviously, we've got our sibling podcast, the DM's Book Club, and you can also find out more. If you go onto that, you'll find out where Hamilton does all his stuff on Fueled by Chaos, and anything that I'm up to at this current point in time. Who knows what that is? But I bet it's fun.
But stuff with What Am I Rolling is your other main place to find
That is true. That is true. But until then, friends, we will
see you on the flip side of the planes.
Of the inner planes.
Of the inner planes. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.